Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Tea Time Chat with Yamile Saied Méndez. I am Stacy Whitman, the publisher and founder of Two Books, which is a middle grade and YA imprint of Lee & Low Books, which is the largest independent publisher of diverse books for children and young adults. Let's just quickly get started by introducing Yamile, and while she does, I'm going to share my screen and show you her book. It is the book birthday today for On These Magic Shores, which Yamile wrote and won a New Visions Award honor in 2015. So Yamile, tell us about yourself in the book.
Hello, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited. And thank you for celebrating On These Magic Shores birthday. Like you said, you won the New Visions Honor Award back in 2015. So the road to publication for this story has been very long, but also very rewarding. And I'm very happy that it's coming at the right time. I feel like all the things that happen in the process happen for a reason. So I'm happy that the day has finally arrived. And like you said, my name is Yamile Saied Méndez, and I was born and raised in Rosario, Argentina. And I came to the US a long time ago. I've lived throughout the country, but mostly in Utah, where I've been for a long time now. I have a family. I'm a mom of 5 kids. I have 2 beautiful dogs, a cat, and I'm a founding member of Las Musas, which is the marketing collective of non-binary and women authors of Latinx children's literature. And On These Magic Shores is a story very dear to my heart. It's about 3 sisters, especially the oldest one, Minerva, who wants to be the first Latina president of the US. And she has a plan. She's a planner. So she has every step of the way figured out, but everything falls apart one day when her mom doesn't come back from work. And she is all alone to take care of her little sisters because she's so afraid that something might happen to them. They might be taken away by ICE, even though they're US citizens. In the mind of a child, she has all these fears. But surprisingly, she starts getting help from new friends that she makes at school, and also from little fairies who her mom used to call peques. And she's going to discover the magic of being a child for the first time, or when she's all by herself to be the mom of her sisters.
Thank you. And also, you notice that we also have Elise Mcmullen-Ciotti, right?
Ciotti. Ciotti.
I keep saying it wrong. I'm so sorry. Anyway, Elise is our freelance editor who also does targeted cultural reads for us, targeted expert reads. And so she'll be coming in discussing what she did, the work she did on this book in just a moment. Elise, can you talk just a little bit, introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. My name is Elise McMullen-Ciotti. Ciotti is an Italian, my husband's Italian name, and the CI makes the ch sound. So, but I get called Ciotti a lot because that's like the Italian American version. I work as I'm an editor and a writer, but I also get called very often to discuss and evaluate and discuss Native American or indigenous themes within books, but also in some plays and screenplays from time to time. And so, yeah, so that's what kind of brought me here. I read On These Magic Shores early on because we have Peter Pan in it, which is kind of a hot button item for indigenous Americans.
And Elise did you say that you're a member of the Cherokee Nation?
Oh, yes. Cherokee Nation. Yeah, definitely hail from the Cherokee Nation, even though I live here in New York City. And yeah, no, I'm back there every year. You're never really gone from your nation. I miss a lot of things, like certain communities and things, but yeah, you're never really gone.
Okay, and now let's go back to the New Visions Award, and let's talk about what that is. Oops, I forgot to share my screen just a moment. I'm going to share a link to the New Visions Award if this would, there we are. The New Visions Award is a writing contest that we run at Two Books every year and have been for, I want to say, about 8 years now. Elise actually reads the submissions with me, and we choose the finalists, and then everyone in a company chooses the winner. And I think it was the third year of the contest that you were a honor winner, Yamile. Can you tell us how you found the award and your experience?
Yes. So I have been following you, Stacy, for a long, long time, even before Two Books was an imprint of Leon Lowe.
And actually, hang on just a sec, because we discovered that we actually have this fun connection from way back that we didn't even know until we found out later, that my college roommate from Mexico hung out with you in high school in Argentina.
Yes, I mean, what a small world. I mean, how bizarre. Yes, I was a very close friend of the family when her family lived in Rosario for 3 years. And then she ended up being your roommate. And then we connected, she and I connected on Facebook about children's books. And then I found out that you and her had been roommates. So yeah.
It's just a small world, but keep going about the New Visions Award. Sorry.
So I started writing a long time ago, but one of the very first writing conferences that I ever attended is called Writing and Illustrating for Young Readers. And it was founded by author Carol Lynch Williams. And she formed this beautiful community of authors and aspiring writers, and she does a workshop every summer, except for this summer that will be virtually. But when I attended my first one, I met my friend Valine Maetani. And Valine had just been awarded the very first New Visions for Ink and Ashes. And so she said, you must enter this contest, Yamile. I'm not gonna leave you alone until you do it. And I really wanted to, but I used to do something that I always advise people not to do, but I used to self-reject all the time. So even before I submitted something, I would find all these excuses of why it wouldn't fit the publisher or why it wouldn't be good enough. So I would let the opportunity go by. But I only had 3 chapters on these magic shores, and I had taken 10 pages to the writing and illustrating workshop. And it was, the leader of the workshop was Cynthia Leidick-Smith. And she was so enthusiastic about the story, and everybody else in the group was also so supportive that I said, okay, I'm going to send it. So I went ahead and sent it. And to my surprise, in January, I received the email saying that it was one of the 3 finalists. And I almost had a heart attack because I had a very rough draft of the whole manuscript, but I had 3 weeks to send it to you, Stacy. I remember that it was February 14th.
And this is why we started taking full manuscripts, to be honest. Not you, but a lot of writers would be like, but I don't have a full manuscript. And we're like, yeah, but you have to have a full manuscript.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. So, but I had a full synopsis and I had a rough draft. So I knew the story very well. And I loved the characters. And I had Minerva speaking in my ear every day, pretty much, before the announcement. You need to finish revising our story. I'm not going to leave you alone until you do. So when the email came in January, I had 3 weeks. And I remember that was the first, during that weekend, it was Valentine's Day. It was the first time that I was going to New York with my husband. And he had planned this trip for months and months. And I spent it in the hotel room, finishing up the revisions. But I went out to some things, but my most vivid memory is just finally sending it when I was happy with it. And just that relief that I had done the best that I knew, and that I hadn't quit. I hadn't self-rejected, because for many times I had the thought of emailing you, Stacy, to say, you know what, I don't have a full manuscript. I'm not going to be able to send it. but I'm glad that I didn't.
So am I.
And so I sent it, and then I received another call later on in April saying that it had won the honor, which was a super happy moment for me. And you, although I had been writing for a long time, and although this is not my debut book, this is my fourth book that comes out, you were the first person in the industry that showed confidence in me and that opened the doors to publishing. And I will forever be grateful, because if it hadn't been for this book, none of my other books, including the previous ones, would exist. So thank you.
Let's talk about that journey for you as a writer, because this book has taken 5 years to come out. One of the biggest reasons why it's taken so long is because we really wanted to get one particular thing right, and that's why Elise is here. The book revolves around Peter Pan, and I don't know if many people are really familiar, if they haven't really watched the old Disney Peter Pan. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the source material and why it was so important for us to get it right.
Do you want me to hop in there?
Sure.
I think a lot of everything, there's been so many renditions of what the Western world has thought of as Peter Pan, with so many different storytellers doing it and their kind of ways of going about it, that they are a little bit disconnected from the original writing from J.M. Barrie. And you know, if people were to go pick that up and read it now, they'd be like, especially in today's climate, they would be like, how is this possible that kids are still putting this play on, or how is this possible that, because of the content. And I
think people are fascinated by the Tinkerbell aspect of it.
Yeah,
these are very magical.
I think that's the even when I wrote my report about this, I was saying that, you know, first I had it just from my own native perspective, saying, I hate this. I hate Peter Pan. It's one of the most racist things in the world. However, the reason why that the story has been so endearing and has lasted for so long is because of the magical element of it, because of Tinkerbell, because I believe in fairies, the adventure, you know, standing up to Hook, and the place where kids can go, there's no parents, and you have this freedom to kind of build your own world. And there are so many aspects to the story that move people, that everybody's very, very willing to kind of look away from what was there before. Disney kind of perpetuated some things too, with an Indian princess and things actually kind of made it
worse.
But I think that we have to acknowledge that this is very problematic, because J.M. Barrie was a white guy in his time, and anybody that wasn't
he was
white
a white British guy, and so didn't even have an American context to understand.
No. It was just
even that. It
was just like whatever's mythical. Like, we got native people got thrown in with like mermaids and so did,
like, as if real people were imaginary beings.
Right. So anybody that wasn't white, or just they're mythical, they're kind of animalistic, and it, you know, doesn't count. So you could just talk about it however you want, because it's like they're not real. But I'm always very cautious about the idea of where you just kind of erase things, because I think that there's such an opportunity to address things instead of just erase things. And so
that was my thinking as well, as we were talking about it, that this book had a real opportunity to challenge the source material. Mm-hmm. And so we went into it thinking about how do we challenge that? Mm-hmm. And how did you guys decide to approach it?
I think one of the things that I thought Yamile did a really excellent job, I remember when I was reading the rewrites of it, one of the things that I really loved about what she did is that she had not only did she have Minerva going, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this, which is like how it should be, but also when she brought in a Native character in the school who actually makes the comment, like, I've been trying to figure out how to manage this as well. Like the pressure that we get to continue traditions that aren't so great. And so there's so many little bits that were acknowledged about what it's like to go through that Yamile just, I thought did beautifully in giving us voice and our complaints without trying to speak for Native people either. It was like she just thread that needle very well and kept the fairies alive. Because fairies are, the fairy part of it, and wrapping that in with the Argentine culture. I thought, it was a wonderful way to address the tiger lily problem. And the problem of we put on this play every single year. This is the play. Like we can't stop doing this play. She just
so instead, the characters find a solution that doesn't erase that history, but resolves that. And eventually, they think maybe next year let's do a different play.
Yeah.
Yes, it was so important to me to weave, like you said, Elise, the Argentine elements of believing in fairies, and because in Argentina we have our own mythology that was brought in by immigrants, and that also got mixed with the native people's mythology, and it was and that I brought as an immigrant here to the U.S., and at the same time recognize the native nations of the place where the story takes place. In Utah, there's a very strong presence of the Diné community, and my kids have friends who are part of the Diné nation, and my son had one of his best teachers ever was a member of the Diné nation. And I remember going to a kindergarten little Christmas play, and they were singing songs that have always been sung that have never been challenged, and one was very, very offensive to Native American people. And I remember thinking, what is the teacher thinking in this moment, being the only Native American teacher in the whole school? And that's always something that stayed with me, and that I try to be very mindful of when I worked on this story.
I think that when I read it, the first versions of it, I could already see Yamile's heart in that. Like she was already folding things in, and her heart was already there.
We just needed a little expertise to guide us on implementation a little bit further. Which leads us to, but before I ask this next question, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We're going to hold them until the end. Elise will be leaving us early in the chat. So if you have any questions for Elise, put them in now, and we'll ask her before she has to go. And then any other questions we'll hold until the end. But as far as our consulting with you on this book, we had a previous Tea Time chat in which you and I talked with Tracy Sorrell about our middle grade title, Indian No More, which was written by Charlene Willing McManus with Tracy. And the editorial process, the expert process for Indian No More was way more involved, partially because the author had passed. And so that is a much more complicated situation in general. But also, this was much more targeted, and we were consulting you as a targeted expert reader as opposed to bringing you on as the full-on editor of the book. So can you talk about the differences in the kind of work that you did on this book versus that book?
Sure.
What that entails.
There are kind of two challenges with in literature in this way. There's like, when you're writing about a specific Native nation, you really have to get that right and work with that nation to get that story right. You're telling their story, you need to get it right. Especially from me, like, it's not coming from in Indian No More, it was an Umpqua girl. I'm not Umpqua, I'm Cherokee. I don't have the authority to say, what's Umpqua, what's not Umpqua. And so we really had, Tracy and I really had to work with the nation and families and people to really get that right and to really honor that. And so we were really telling the particular part of history in a particular nation, and that was very extensive. For things like Peter Pan, or say other issues like I like to think of like mascots, and or like they finally took off the Indigenous woman off the Land O'Lakes butter recently. You know, there's just things that kind of have this overarching, you know, for Indigenous people from many nations are going to kind of all have the same kind of feeling about it and are dealing with kind of that same history. We all still have a somewhat of a shared history and shared issues. And this was more about that. This was more about kind of taking on a particular story and reevaluating it and addressing things in it from a more general,
challenging stereotypes.
Yeah, challenging stereotypes, instead of it being like we have to get everything about this nation right and the story right. And both are necessary when we're writing and we're doing this kind of storytelling where you have Indigenous people in it, but they're just different. They're going to be different types of work, and so I guess that's it.
Thank you. Pausing really quick because I just saw that somebody has asked who's eligible to apply for the New Voices. New Voices is our picture book award. New Visions is the middle grade and YA. What genres do we take and what age groups? I forgot to mention that. So very quickly, the New Visions Award, which is the link that I put up earlier. If you missed it, you can find it at leeandlow.com/writers-illustrators. I'll bring it up at the end just so that everybody can see it again. But New Visions Award is for middle grade and YA novels and graphic novels for unpublished writers of color who are unagented. So basically, it's a discovery contest for writers of color who have never been published before and haven't had a chance to find an agent yet. And our New Voices Award is the picture book award for the same group of people. We do open up our submissions from time to time to everyone, and we are open to agented submissions from everyone. It's just that the writing contests are targeted to discover new writers of color. So thank you for that. I knew I had forgotten something important. Okay.
I could just make one little encouragement out there to everyone who's parents and teachers, librarians, and that are kind of looking at Peter Pan and they're really kind of wondering, what do I do with Peter Pan? I think that I think creating a context around it and educating yourself about the book and reading the original and understanding the issues around it, and just kind of educating yourself as a teacher or a parent or a librarian so that you can be the voice of context when it does come up. And then read Yamile's book because she does it really, she handles it well, and it gives us some new ideas of how to approach this particular work. But to definitely go in and really have a hard look at the original so that you really know and understand. And I think that, and not just go to Disney or watch the movie or whatever, but go read it and so that you know and really can understand before moving on.
And also, we will plan on doing a teacher's guide for this. The pandemic has kind of gotten in the way of that. So it is coming. It's just not up on our site just yet.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to add to what you said, Elise, that sometimes we as grown-ups are so in love with the stories that we had when we were young, and we don't really think about the content, how it can be harmful, even for our own.
Until you have to start reading it aloud to your child.
Yes.
Start editing it.
Like,
I do that a lot.
People are, being killed left and right. So I do encourage everybody to go in with an open mind, because Minerva, my character, she's very outspoken and she's not subtle about calling out the things that she sees wrong, not only in Peter Pan, but about every
in the world.
so she can come across as a very challenging character, but just open up your
Also
heart.
so lovable.
Yes.
I love her plan to become the first Latina president of the United States. We will go into that in a moment. We'll go ahead and let Elise log off.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Elise.
Yes, thank you for having me. And Yamile, happy book birthday. Bye, everyone.
Okay, so yes, let's talk about her plan. Let's talk about, I think that's a perfect segue into how I kind of view this book as kind of a reverse Peter Pan.
Yes.
That Peter Pan is all about helping kids to know that they don't need to be eternal kids, that they can grow up at some point, even though that's sad. This is a book that says there are some kids that have to grow up too soon, and that's not okay. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Well, I am an oldest child, and I can attest. I saw a meme the other day that made me laugh a lot because it said, "Are you an oldest child, or did you have a childhood?" And it pretty much encapsulates my experience. But I also, being a woman, having been a girl of color, growing up in a very a sexist society, as much as I love my country, I'm always very vocal about the problems that we have with violence against girls and women, and how especially girls of color are sexualized since a very, very young age, and they're not given the same allowances to be innocent and to be little for as long as they can. And so Minerva, being the oldest daughter, she has a lot of responsibilities, and also it's her own nature to take a lot more than I mean, her mom doesn't want her to be the mom, but she just takes it up herself because she has that personality. And she can't wait to grow up because in her mind, she already does everything an adult does, but she has all the obligations, but none of the benefits. And so she just wants to be the president of the US to change the world and make it better, and to make her own life better, right?
Right.
And the life of other children in her situation. So her first, in her plan to become the president of the US, which is such a revolutionary idea, that for a Latina girl in the US growing up in these times, to think that she has the solutions to fix all of the country's problems is just so.
And she probably does.
Yes. Yes.
Childhood first.
And so her first part of the plan is getting the role of Wendy in Peter Pan, because Wendy is the main girl in the play and in the story. And of course, she's not going to get it. She's not going to get, I mean, and that's not a spoiler because it happens.
It's on the first page, yeah. Yes. Tell us that plan, because that's what hooked my heart from the very beginning.
Well, she detests Wendy because she's in love with Peter. And in her mind, that's all she does. And then become, be Peter Pan's object of affection, and also then becomes the mom of the lost boys. So for Minerva, that's such a that's the opposite of who she wants to be. Later on, she has her own emotional arc, and she comes to terms with the importance of needing.
But what's that plan? Why does she want this play to be in this play if she hates Wendy?
She wants to be in the play because traditionally, the people who've been the lead roles in the play will become the president of the student body council in middle school. And then in high school, she wants to put that in her application to go into college, become a lawyer, and then continue her path to the White House. So for her, it's very
that was the plan, was what hooked me from the very beginning. I'm like, I like this girl. She's got a plan for her life. It's just completely laid out. And you're right, when you said earlier, it all falls apart. Mom disappears, and they are very poor. Like, this is a family that doesn't even have a cell phone. Mm-hmm. Some of the readers early on were like, how do they not have cell phones? Because they're like, everybody has cell phones, even poor people. Well, if you're a single mom of 3 kids, you want a home phone, like if they're at home and they need to dial 911, right? Yes. Not if mom is at work and the phone is going to be with her, right?
Yes, and I think that aspect became very, very apparent during the pandemic when out of force, children had to learn from home. And it was very obvious that not everybody had either a phone or internet access to even do the basic things as schoolwork. Or some families have only one device that they have to share, that the parent needs to work on, and then several children need to share. It's not only about, being lazy, and that's why kids haven't been participating in school from home.
Right,
But
the digital divide is very real.
Yes, it is. It is.
And so Minerva is dealing with this digital divide. She's trying to go to school as if nothing has changed. She's just pretending like, mom is at work today and I'm just taking over for the day. And why does she do that? Let's talk about her specific situation as Latina kids in the US, afraid that, what are her fears?
Oh, she's a dark-skinned Latina girl. And although she, and even her mom was born in the US, she watches the news. She's a very informed child. And she knows what's been happening, that when it comes to the moment of truth, somebody who hates immigrants or people of color, they're not going to be asking for your passport or your birth certificate. They're just going to look at the person itself and already form an opinion. So she's very worried that even though her family is not undocumented, if the authorities find out they're by themselves, she and her sisters will be sent away to these camps.
They've never been. Yeah.
Yes.
And there have been stories of US citizens being sent to these places.
Yes, exactly. And also in the mind of a child, they don't understand about, having a birth certificate that gives them all these rights. They just know when people see her and they ask her where she's from.
And she's in a very white community that, yeah. So the first friend she makes at school, let's talk quickly about him. Who is her first friend?
Oh my goodness. I was telling you before we were in live how Minerva and her sisters really came fully formed in my mind with a name and a last name and their little backstory and their relationship. They were just a bundle deal, and I could not write this story and leave any of them out. And it was the same thing with Maverick, the friend who is a boy, and who he's a Latino boy adopted into a white family, a very affluent family, and they hate each other at first sight, or more, it's her hatred, because she's in 7th grade, he's in 8th, and the first thing he says to her when she asks for help, which is already very hard for her to do, he says, "I don't talk to Sebis," meaning 7th graders. Which is
there's a story behind this, right?
Yes, when we moved into our area, the first friend my child made was a very, very loose version of Maverick. And I didn't base Maverick on this little friend, except that
one line.
that one phrase that he used one day talking about my daughter. "Oh, I don't talk to 7th graders. I don't talk to Sebis." And I thought it was hilarious. How children make these rules that make no sense. I mean, both we were 7th grader 2 months ago. But all of a sudden, being an 8th grader puts you in a different
social strata.
Yes. So yes, they don't like each other at all, but Maverick is the only one who really sees her. When she's at the audition and she's struggling to be cool, she struggles because she's wearing a dress that then she finds out had belonged to her nemesis. And Minerva discovers that her mom had been cleaning her nemesis's house. And that's another layer of things that some children have to deal with. Their peers are not really their peers sometimes.
Right.
There's already all these different interactions that were established by the interactions their parents had. And they just have to live in this world and figure out how to be a normal kid and still balance all these different situations. So, but Maverick sees her, and the sisters love him immediately because he's charming and fun. And he is a beloved youngest son of in a family with 6 sisters, and Minerva just can't imagine what it's like to be this kind of loved and cherished and protected. And he just takes them in, and being that typical happy child, he does not want to grow up, because that's what happens. The only children that don't want to grow up are the ones that are happy.
Yes. That's true. And let's quickly talk about, there are a lot of people who might read a story like this of a child going through such a hard time and go, well, why does it need magic? It's just a, you know, it's just real life. Tell us about the Peques and magical realism and why they're so important.
Okay, so the Peques, Peques is short for pequeños, and pequeños or pequeñitos are how duendes or fairies or gnomes are known as in Argentina, especially in Patagonia. Patagonia has had a big influx of Welsh and Irish immigrants in the 20th century, and of course they brought their lore, and there were already a lot of magical stories about these spirits that would help people if you would leave them a cup of milk or some honey or a treat, and they will help you, just like your typical fairy stories. They will help you if you were a good child. And so when the mom goes missing, a lot of little magical things start happening, and Minerva never sees them. In fact, Minerva, at the very opening of the story, she says something like fairies don't exist, and her sisters are appalled, because remember, in Peter Pan, if you say that a fairy doesn't exist,
you kill the fairies.
They're all dead in Neverland. So the sisters are appalled, and she just claps, oh, I believe, just to make her sisters not feel so horrible. But throughout the course of the story, she can explain how they keep getting out of trouble, other than to say that it was a miracle or that they had help from the fairies. So in the end, she starts believing that they're real, and that we can go on through this life either without the help of the people we know, a community, which was something very important, going back to what you said about her being a US citizen and still being scared. I'm very active in the Latinx community here in Utah, and I've seen firsthand how if a family doesn't have a support system, it doesn't matter what kind of documents you have. It's very hard to survive. So
I think what's really interesting about Utah, you and I have both lived there at some point in our lives. I know a lot of white people in Utah who don't realize quite how diverse Utah is, because their communities don't always include people from other cultures, but that is a function of community outreach as well, right?
Exactly. Sometimes these immigrant families or these they form their own communities within a community to help each other out. And Minerva's family, being brand new, they had just moved into this basement apartment. They don't have a community at all. And so that's something that she needs to learn, that you can't go through life without the support of a community, friends, the community at school. She's so scared of telling her teachers what's going on at home, but one teacher notices that she's struggling. And then, of course, that extra little help from beings that you cannot see, that can only be magical. And more than
eventually from some extended family, which we won't be specific about.
Exactly. That family for the Latinx community is not only the family that you live with, but extends to people whom you have never met or that live across continents, but there's still a support even when you're far away.
So now hang on, I have a cat who's trying to move. This is Tildrum. In the Q&A, Vita Bybee asks, what is your favorite tea and why? And we've been seeing you sipping from a little, tell us about what this is on the cover.
It's perfect, because in the chat I also had a similar question Biodivia asking what's one of my favorite Argentine traditions that I could use, that I used in my book. So I'm gonna take the opportunity, since this is a tea chat, I thought about bringing some of my favorite teacups with fairies, and then I thought, no, it's the perfect opportunity to showcase my mate. So I'm gonna show you my mate, and this is my thermos that has the little emblem for my favorite soccer team from Argentina. It's called Rosario Central, because of course the girl can leave Rosario, but Rosario has never left me. And mate is just an herbal tea made of yerba mate leaves. And this is a drink that's consumed in pretty much all of South America, because I have friends from Chile and Bolivia and Peru that also drink mate. And especially in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, we're very hardcore mate drinkers. Mate is dry, toasted and dry, kind of like tea and coffee, and we put the loose leaves in a cup. This cup can be made of different materials. This is a stainless steel one that my high school friends sent me when I got married more than 20 years ago. And even though I go through a lot of mate cups, I still come back to this. It's a perfect size. I just love it. So, and then I put the dry leaves. The straw is called a bombilla. A bombilla is a filter straw. I'm gonna take it out, which is like a sin to touch the bombilla, but I just wanna show you that it has a filter. And some people drink it with sugar. I'm at the age that I can't, since I drink mate all day long, I had to cut on the sugar consumption. So I use a Splenda or just nothing. And then you pour the hot water and you drink it. Sometimes I will put in mint leaves or a chamomile or coffee. Some people put a little bit of coffee, dried orange peel or dried lemon peel, dried not watermelon, oh my goodness, the others. No, the others to just food, the big one, grapefruit. Dried grapefruit. There's a similar drink called
kombucha.
Goodness, it's made also of mate, but it's cold. And and now mate, yerba mate it can be seen, and I have found it in health stores as an energy drink. I have tried both versions in a can. My children like it a lot. I'm just a hot drink person. I'm a purist in that way, so I just drink mate hot. And I drink it all the time. The thing is also, like, I can make a demonstration because I'm by myself, but usually mate is a very social drink. And you just, when you share it with your family and you just drink.
And there's a scene in the book, right? Tell us about the scene in the book where a family member comes to visit and what happens.
The first thing you do is you offer mate. And when you are offered a mate as a non-member of this community, you cannot deny it. We do share the straw. I don't know how things will change after COVID, but
yeah, if you're not supposed to take the straw out, but
and not everybody, they don't have their own little mate cup. You know, like we pour the water, you drink it all, you pour it again, and you pass it to the next person. Usually, the oldest person in the family is the one in charge of making the mate and sharing it with the family. There's an official cebadora, that's what it's called. And usually in Argentina, we say that an act of passage of how you know you've come to age is that you make your mate for yourself, not to share with your family. You make it for your own, to study or to watch TV. So, and it's a very important part. We call it the friendship tea because you can see mate at homes of every social level, from the most poor to the richest person will have mate at home.
I just realized we've been kind of rambling on. I didn't realize quite how long we've been going on. One last question, and then we're going to have to wrap up. And there's a very important, it's a very brief scene in the book, but I think it's a very important scene for children to understand, in which Minerva is writing her friend's scooter, and is she stopped by the police? Why, who was with her in that scene, and what is the significance of that scene?
Very good. We had seen a similar encounter, not a very frontal encounter with a police officer before, but this police officer had been patrolling her neighborhood, and she felt that he had an eye on her when she was sneaking out of school to check on her sisters, or that he would find out that they were by themselves. And then this time when she's with the scooter, it's dark already. And when he stops her, the two friends that come to her rescue are Maverick, who again is a Latino boy of privilege, and Blessings, who's a Black boy, also privileged, but they're 3 children of color. And their reactions, they're just paralyzed. Although her first impulse had been to run away, then she thought of the consequences, that she couldn't leave her friends alone. And they're just paralyzed because, of course, again, as children do not live in a vacuum. They hear and see what's going on, and they also inherit the perceived reactions from that they see in their parents and in their families. So this police officer in particular, he's not an evil person. He's been patrolling the neighborhood, but he is not very gentle when he talks to these children. He treats them as if they're grown-ups and they were caught doing something. He doesn't believe them that that's their motor scooter. And the first thing he wants to do is go and talk to their parents. And of course, Minerva doesn't have a mom at home. And that's when the situation gets complicated. But
without giving spoilers, we won't go any further.
No, I will not. But that's her dilemma, how to comply with what the officer is asking of her when she, and then at the same time, keep hiding the fact that her mom is not at home.
And this scene is handled very gently. It is for middle grade, so that, you know, it's not a scene that anybody should be scared of reading or traumatizing their children with, but it does handle it very realistically.
Just shows a realistic
feels.
Situation that many children that I'm familiar with, and even me as a child, have gone through. And that's something that stays with you. In fact, I've had feedback from some readers that were very skeptical that something like this would happen. But
it's real. It's very realistic.
It happens all the time. It's happened to my family many times, especially since moving into this area. And sometimes I wanted to show that even a position of financial privilege will not save you from an uncomfortable situation.
Yes, thank you. I think we've answered all the Q&A. You on Twitter, maybe follow Yamile on Twitter. Tell us your Twitter.
I'm Yamile Saied Méndez. And remember, Yamile, I pronounce the Y like an SH, but it's a Y. So Y, S for Sayed, which is my maiden name, and then Méndez.
Follow her on Twitter, and you can answer the Amparo's question, what's another family dynamic in middle grade or YA fantasy that warms your heart? Follow her on Twitter, and you can answer that there, right?
And before we leave, I want to tell you, I have a super fun little incentive going on. And I want to open it all to you, participants. Go to my Instagram, which is my same handle, Yamile Saied Méndez. And I have a link in my bio for you to request a little fairy door. I showed a picture on my social media, and you don't have to provide any proof of purchase. Just, I want to give you something for being so supportive and being here today. So I promise I will only use your address to send you a signed book plate and the little fairy door, and you can ask for it to be personalized, and I'll be happy to send it to you. So please make sure and you do that. Please, I don't want to have 25 leftover fairy doors in my house. So we enough.
And just very briefly, here's the address for the New Visions Award again. And next week, join us again. Oops. There we go. Next week, join senior editor Jessica Echeverria and author Andrea Loney. They'll be talking about her picture book, Take a Picture of Me, James Van Der Zee, which is about famed Harlem photographer James Van Der Zee. That's next Tuesday at noon. So join us again. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Yamile. This is such, hang on, I'm gonna stop sharing because I want to share our last frame to be, take a look at this beautiful book. It is a gorgeous, lovely story. It will touch your heart and you will laugh and you will cry. And I just want everyone to read it because it's just so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.